Deal, recognize Ms. Moore of Wisconsin.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ranking Member, and I thank all of our witnesses for their extraordinary testimony here today. I've been listening very carefully, and I want to make sure I understand what we're talking about here. The official poverty level, how many of you think that the official poverty level, were someone have to live off that, is enough for any size family to live on, whether it's in Mississippi or in New York? If that were their only source of income, how many of you think it's enough? You, Miss Mogg? You, Dr. Corinth?
Should I respond?
Yeah, just very
So I
quickly.
think the reason for that is, so Congress has tied SNAP eligibility for, say, 130% of the poverty line, or ACA.
But I mean, if someone just had poverty level wages and that was all the income they had, it's a baseline.
Yeah.
And anything, but you don't really think people can live off that, right?
I think that's a value judgment for you all to make.
That's a
not
value
for an
judgment
expert.
for us to make. So I'm very interested in this notion of consumption. Given the examples that all of you have talked about with the, someone talked about the coastal elites on California. I don't live there, or New York. Do people have any choice about how the high cost of housing is? I mean, you can be living in some rundown, rat-infested tenement, or you can be homeless in Oakland, California, and the cheapest property you could get could be $1,500 a month. And so the poverty measure there, I understand, is different than it would be in rural Arkansas. Does this consumption data measurement address that, Dr. Meyer? Would we be able to be more equitable if we use that measurement?
I think absolutely we would be able to be more equitable. It's not that there aren't people who are very deprived everywhere in the country. This is a question of figuring out where people are the worst off, because we want to direct resources especially to people who are the most worst off.
Right. We wouldn't want to skew the data by having a measurement of, say, rural Mississippi and say this is the level at which we expect people in New York or Brooklyn or Chicago, that this is the standard. And so you're going to have too many poor people if you raise, just say the OPM, not even the SPM, but if you just change that, you'll end up spending $124 billion because you're going to now disclose that we have more poor people. Isn't that really what the argument might be, Ms. Mogg, that this is a disclosure issue here?
That's right. Consumption, we don't have adequate data to really understand what people consume. Moreover, people consume using credit cards and the high-risk payday lending, selling plasma. These aren't the marks of an advanced society, and they certainly don't take a whole person's whole well-being into account.
With regard to this, okay, go on, Dr. Besheroff here.
So what's tricky about this is, under the SPM, Black poverty doesn't change. Hispanic poverty goes up. Child poverty goes down. Elder poverty goes up. So all the questions you're asking are very valid. The answer to them is the way the Congress then sets the eligibility. It's 135% of the poverty line for food stamps, SNAP, 185 for WIC. These are judgments that are made program by program. And I think, speaking for myself only, the concern I have is that congressional set of decisions will not necessarily be the ones we'll have in the future if they change the poverty measure. I'm not disagreeing with whatever the number is, but the Congress keeps setting different ones anyway.
But the thing of it is, don't people need more help with housing and food? I mean, if you live in New York, I just can't imagine living there.
And the most direct way to do it, ma'am, is to say the housing benefit is not 150, it's actually, I think, by local costs. But the answer is not to make it 150% of poverty, it's to make it 175% of poverty.
Sneak one more question in.
Sure.
I don't know where you guys are getting this data, other than, Mr. Hanson, you said you think it's a setback for us to take away work requirements. Ms. Mogg, is there any data? I haven't read any literature that demonstrates that the child tax credit keeps people from working. It's an incentive to work. All of a sudden, you have extra $300 if you've got little bitty kids, and you can still work without being punished or without having to hide it or wondering if your social worker's going to catch you or bust you. Is there any evidence that there's a decreased work from refundable tax credits?
Evidence from multiple studies showed that families that received the child tax credit continued to work at the same rates as families who didn't receive the credit. There's also evidence that people use the child tax credit to pay for work supports such as transportation and childcare.
Like places like Lorain, Ohio, which has no public transportation. I don't know how these people get to work. Mr. Chairman, thank you for your indulgence. I yield back.
Thank you,